Hi everyone, this is Giulio Coraggio, location head of the Italian Intellectual Property and Technology Department at DLA Piper. This is the podcast Diritto al Digitale, and today we have a special guest, Dazza Greenwood. Dazza Greenwood is a founder and CEO of civics.com, but is known as one of the most active legal tech consultants, specifically with reference to artificial intelligence. And indeed, I invited Dazza to know a bit more about his view on the impact of AI within the legal consultancy sphere. First of all, Dazza, thank you for accepting my invite.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be on this podcast with you. And of course, I've been following your very active work in the area on LinkedIn and elsewhere as well. So it's great to finally be connected with you.
Okay, thank you. Dazza, we are touching base with different legal experts in the industry. And there are those that say, okay, our practice is not going to change much over the years because we are so smart that the machine will never catch up. And those that acknowledge that something is going to change and the change is going to be fast. Someone is making a parallel between the growth of generative AI with the advent of the iPhone that changed all the mobile phone industry. What do you think is going to be the impact of AI, in particular generative AI, on the legal industry? Are we going to continue doing our legal practice as we have been doing during the last 20 years, or we need to change and do it fast?
You know, I think the change is, well, there's two things that are going to happen. The first is quick change, which is already happening in law offices and in-house counsel, regulators and legislators alike across the world, as they kind of adopt and apply this new technology to almost every task that we're doing that involves drafting, analyzing, summarizing matters. The second thing is going to be an even bigger change, and that'll take, I think, a little while longer for the overall the economy and society to catch up to this new capability. Many people expect that there's going to be more profound and deeper changes in the nature of work itself, the nature of enterprises, types of lines of business and products and services. You mentioned the iPhone, that's a device that has a market share that you could say is, arguably it was the same kind of device when the first day it came out as a dumb phone, and it competed head to head. That was not the major impact. There's a whole constellation of applications and services and ways of working, ways of interacting, ways of connecting. It really created a whole new type of economy, you could say, and society, arguably as well. So too, this technology will see the same thing, and that's going to impact law more than most other places, partly because law is a language-intensive field, and so this technology is more applicable to law than perhaps, there's no other place on the planet that this technology is going to impact more than law, I believe.
Do you think that then technology suppliers are gonna jump into the field of legal advice, or it's more gonna be that law firms are gonna partner with the technology suppliers, or I don't know, there is a third option. How are we gonna see that the legal market is gonna change? Yeah, on the one hand, we are going to have technology suppliers that are going to become providers of legal services. And on the other hand, maybe we're going to have law firms that are going to partner with the technology suppliers or are going to become themselves providers of technology to avoid losing market share.
Oh, okay, I see what you mean now. Um, well, of course, it's hard to predict the future, but based on initial trends, it looks like we'll see both of the things that you just said, and we're already seeing early indicators of both of those activities. People are using this technology, and small businesses are using this technology directly from the providers to start to do legal research. And you know what? It has not been empirically studied in a very rigorous way yet, but early lots of anecdotal evidence suggests that many people are better off now using this technology than they were Googling or asking their friends what the law was, of all the people that don't already have in-house legal counsel and big fancy contracts with lawyers. And so it's not perfect, but we're already seeing some impact there, and that's going to take shape. And there'll be safeguards and protections, and that'll be part of the picture. I think the second thing you said about law firms changing, in a sense, the way that they provide legal services so that it's more encapsulated as part of a technology offering. I do think we've already been seeing that for a while in different places, in supply chains and in certain complex transactions where the law firm gets almost embedded in the business and technology systems of their clients and helps to do configurations and many other types of things. And in a sense, that becomes the way that law is provided, and legal advice becomes encoded, in a sense, in these systems. I think there's going to be a lot more interesting ways that lawyers can provide applications and services that integrate with other kind of workflows in the future, that's driven by these LLMs, but also have the human oversight and control and accountability that a licensed lawyer can provide. So I do think we'll start to see that. I haven't yet exactly seen it, but now that you mention it, I guess I have heard of some sort of grad students at MIT and at some hackathons out here in the Bay Area, where I am in San Francisco, that are doing projects that kind of are examples of the second thing that you're saying, a kind of an app and service offering of a law office that are driven almost entirely by large language models and generative AI. My sense is probably the biggest changes will be things that we can't predict or foresee today in this podcast. It'll be second and third order changes, but nonetheless, we should try to look over the horizon as best we can and adapt our navigation.
No, absolutely. I do believe that the only way for law firms to survive is to partner with the technology suppliers on the one end, and on the other end, to understand technology, build technology within their legal offering. Because, as you mentioned before, generative AI allows them to simplify the provision of legal services. So if we don't provide clients with an enhanced service, clients are gonna move away from law firms, and a law firm cannot expect to do just rocket science work. That would be ideal, but it's not realistic. Now, on the world around artificial intelligence is divided between those that are very pro-AI and those that raise concerns. How do you think that the legal industry needs to tackle artificial intelligence and embed artificial intelligence in their offering, if there are some potential ethical or other type of legal concerns?
Yeah, indeed. And so this is a critical question right now, I think, among practicing attorneys who are already using this technology as part of their everyday work in practicing law. There are not a lot of mature policies and guidelines and procedures governing the use of generative AI in law firms and in legal departments of in-house counsel. There's some initial guidance that's come out, but there's a bit of a scramble right now with people with like managing partners and IT directors and the other kind of people involved in managing the use of technology for law practice, trying to develop and share with each other what those policies and guidelines should be. To try to get ahead of this and to at least be constructive and share back the best ideas that we're hearing. The law.MIT.edu research unit that you mentioned at the top of the show that I run has launched a task force. And it is the task force on responsible use of generative AI for law and legal processes. And we'll be publishing an initial draft of principles and guidelines with some commentary on what we think lawyers should keep in mind when they're using this. But just at a very high level, some of the key themes are, number one, client consent, because this is a new technology, and having disclosure of what we're doing as fiduciaries, after all, for our clients is critical, and not just disclosure, but also their understanding and their consent. Another big one that has to do with almost a kind of like a continuing legal education related to the competent use of the technology. And I think that the concern here is the quality of what you get out is heavily dependent on the prompt that you compose. And so, understanding prompt engineering is going to be critical, and having certain kind of quality assurance for that is going to be critical. With all computer systems, garbage in, garbage out, they say. This is particularly sensitive, this technology, to even small nuances in what's in the prompt. And so you can find out more about legal prompt engineering, which is a bit of a domain-specific type of prompt engineering at civics.com and law.MIT.edu. There's also issues of sometimes the outputs are not factually accurate, and some people say it lies or it hallucinates. I don't think using those kinds of anthropomorphic terms, making it sound like a human, is quite accurate. But you have to understand that there may be, it could sort of fabricate facts or confabulate narratives, and that really requires the lawyer to keep a careful eye on the output and to make sure it's truthful, it's accurate, the citations are accurate, the legal reasoning is good. Confidentiality comes up. So for the service provider, almost everyone's using an external service provider for these services. You have to be careful of leaking confidential client information or other proprietary or sensitive data. And this is, companies are already starting to deal with this, that provide generative AI with enterprise kind of offerings and ways to deal with confidential information. But that's still a concern. And I'll end with this last one that is near and dear to my heart, and it has to do with a subtle fiduciary duty. It's the fiduciary duty of loyalty. So with this one, as attorneys, we need to put our clients' interests first, above our own or above some other party's interests or whatever. And whenever you use these generative AIs to generate whether drafts or analysis or whatever you're doing, whatever you get isn't free of some kind of interest or bias. Everything in language has some implied bias, sometimes explicit bias in favor of this or that. What I think the trick for lawyers, and we're still getting our heads around this and coming up with exercises and issue spotting and skill building, but basically to have a critical eye to ask yourself in the output, whose interest does this serve? Is it maybe stilted toward the buyer or the seller or a big company or a small company or this or that? And then to ask yourself, does this reflect the priorities and the interests and what I'm optimizing for my client? And if it does, great. If it doesn't, then change it, because that's another filter we need to apply as attorneys in using this technology. Best way to do it, by the way, is go back and change your prompt and use legal prompt engineering to express what the interests and priorities of your client are. You don't even have to say the name of the client to do that, and then you'll get much better outputs. Anyway, here's just the tip of the iceberg of the types of due diligence and prudent use of the technology that attorneys should keep in mind. And you can learn a lot more about that at law.MIT.edu/AI when our guidelines and principles come out.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I agree with you. We see clients that are embarking into the AI world without considering the legal implications of the exploitation of these kind of technologies. And indeed, at DLA Piper, on the one hand, we are providing consultancy services. On the other hand, we are embedding AI in our legal services and also supporting clients in using AI in their operations, in the offering of services to their clients, because AI is going to expedite all the operations. So even for instance, the in-house counsel and their in-house team will not work anymore as used to do, but they need to do this shift with the proper safeguards. Otherwise, it's just creating an additional risk rather than simplifying operations. Dazza, the last question. We're seeing draft regulations on AI popping up all around the world, in the US, in Europe, in China. We noticed that sometimes they are over conservative, especially the European Union traditionally has always been very conservative in regulations. Where do you think the right balance between protecting individuals and rights owners, and on one hand exploiting AI is placed? How the regulations should be drafted in this situation where basically we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, because maybe 6 months ago people were not talking about LLM, and now it's the main topic of discussion every day.
I take your point that that continental Europe has yet again tended toward a more regulatory and prescriptive approach to the use of technology in those jurisdictions, and the early drafts of the AI Act and a bunch of other reactions, I guess I would say, not least of which in your own country of Italy, are harbingers of this tendency. This is the only way to approach regulation. The two critical things to keep in mind in looking across the board of options. One of them is, we have already a lot of existing law that applies perfectly well to the use of this technology or that technology. Just yesterday, several United States agencies, the Department of Justice, FTC, and other regulatory agencies put out a joint statement, which I posted about on LinkedIn, reminding everybody that they have existing statutory and regulatory authority to enforce laws against discrimination and bias and other automated decision issues that can arise. And they don't require an AI specific act to do that. This is somewhat of a common law approach to looking at laws and applying them to new facts and circumstances. So, but we do have that in the U.S. and that's one thing to keep in mind. In every country, we have existing laws that can be applied to this technology. The other thing is, there's other ways to regulate the technology. I'm a big fan of the United Kingdom's approach, which is a very pro-innovation approach that also is, I think, very clear-headed about risks and harms that could happen to individuals and others as a result of the misuse or accidental outcomes from this technology. But overall is creating a structure that allows experimentation and keeps a careful, watchful eye so that regulation can be formed to respond to demonstrable market failures and demonstrable harms, not to try to guess what might happen next and risk freezing the market or getting it wrong in various ways. And so I think they've got a very enlightened approach. Something that few people are talking about that we probably should talk about now is identity. It's already becoming hard to know when the source of a message was a human versus a generative AI. And I think that's something we didn't really adjust for that in our old, like we have identity theft and some other things, but they're addressing other problems. I think we do need to get be faster at identifying what's likely to happen as a result of deep fakes and just sort of astroturfing at broad scale the market, all of our information channels with information that might be coming from a giant bot army that's maybe been weaponized against us, or is from a fraud army, or who knows what. So I think this is going to be something that is a little bit new, and there's some other new things, but I would suggest a balanced approach that doesn't kill the enormous benefits. So to balance has to be proportional to the benefits. Let's not lose the benefits. People should have access to this technology, and we should keep a watchful eye and respond with regulation to demonstrable failures, as opposed to try to pre-guess what might happen tomorrow.
No, absolutely. Dazza, it was a very interesting chat, and I thank you for your time, and I'm sure we're gonna talk much in the future, because the world of generative AI is just at the very beginning, so we will exchange views in the coming months.